Alright, let's make sure everything's working here today. You guys should be able to hear me. You guys should be able to generally see me. At least my little avatar there. Alright, so what are we doing today? Working on system stuff, and I'm going to be reading some research and pulling some information into my notes over here. Got some notes that I'm doing. And yeah, just hanging out. I got my Linux systems up. I'll show my college students some of this stuff the other day. So we got the environment stuff going. Okay, so yeah, we leave that up. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, so this is what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be reading through and taking in notes and pulling down some different things that I need for my dissertation stuff. But if people have questions about the Professional Linux Users Group or Linux in general, or they want to talk through any of that stuff, we can do that too. I do have all my stuff here in case anybody wants to see. Yeah, there's my information going on there. Here's our little beginner start here section that we always kind of have for people. So, okay. So I am reading stuff, pulling in maybe useful notes and stuff that's going to go into, possibly into my dissertation, maybe. Where's my dissertation? It's in one of these other windows. Gotta find my IRB too. There's the IRB. Okay. Lots to do. Lots to do tonight. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. But otherwise, I'm just kind of hanging out, working on stuff. And yeah, see how it goes here. Okay. So, here's my library. Here's this stuff. See what these guys are saying. Go read down through, and I want to see if they're, so for any one article that I'm looking at, I'm gonna do probably name. Let's just think this through. Maybe we'll even do it as a table. We'll have name, empirical, and then notes, and then probably what's it called, the bibliography. If I could spell bibliography right, probably not. All right, that's what we're going to be doing. So yeah, I'm just going to be hanging out here and doing this stuff. Might turn this music off. It's kind of bugging me. Yeah, we'll just do it all silent. So yeah, if you guys have any questions about any of this stuff, let me know. What I want to do with these guys is I want to jump down to their actual study. If they're doing empirical studies, that's one of the main things here. And this is not empirical, but they do have bibliography. Let's say notes. And if it is empirical, then we'll have that. Okay. But this is not one, so we're not going to worry about that. Get out of there. Let's just keep going down the chain. Down for this one might be interesting. Do I have to actually look at this as a PDF? All right, I guess so. That's what we'll do. They got some tables, they got some stuff going on, but the question is, did they do any empirical research? Come on, load up. Nope. I don't see any actual, I mean, this is theoretical, and that's good, but it's not actually giving us any, oh, maybe they did collect some data. Okay. They did collect some data, so that's good. Let's see what their evaluation of that data is. They're using AES, good. They do have some data. So this one is and let's see their conclusion. Secure cross-domain authentication for IoT. And in the future, scheme could be expanded to broker application domains comprehensively meet the complex demands of IoT. Additionally, attention can be given to the development of emerging technologies such as quantum secure computing to further enhance the security of the scheme. Okay, so that's interesting. This is empirical. This is they did gather some data, right? And they did something with the data that they gathered. So that's good. It's not directly in line with what I'm doing though, so that might be less useful. But they do have a lot of other things that are out there. I need from 2022 and on, so 2021 is even a bit dated for me as far as dissertation work. I have to probably have 2022 and on for the most part. Yeah, this could be, so this is theoretical what they're talking about here, so it could be, that's the thing about theoretical stuff. Sometimes it is over-engineered from like a application standpoint. So like we would not be trying to apply this for sure to real systems, but this is probably, you know, them pushing the envelope just a little bit. So they have 3 games that they played here, right, as I was kind of reading through it. And you know, there's game 0, game 1. Oh, maybe they had 4, because then they had game 2, yep, and then game 3. So they had 4 games, and they were checking to see if they could compromise the session key or any of these different things that had been set. And they were talking about the resistance to these different things. Would you ever apply these things like this to the actual systems world? Probably not. But the theory behind it is interesting, especially if it's pushing some new theory, which they're kind of doing. So yeah, from some perspectives, this would be what we would consider like over-engineered for that. But I look at this and I go, okay, they have some interesting things going on here. They are doing authentication, which is similar. It's in the same vein of what I'm doing along Bastion nodes, but I don't think that that research is necessarily relevant to kind of what I'm doing. So let's keep going down. Scalable authentication and tracking of ICs, which would be interesting. Maybe not exactly what I'm working on though. So this is interesting. So this is a novel multi-factor peer-reviewed from 2025, so August 2025. So this one is pretty new, pretty hot off the press as far as that goes. And let's look at what they're actually talking about doing. So they're introducing a novel graphical multi-factor authentication, integrate using user image hashes and dynamic image grids with cell addresses. Okay. And they're calling it this new acronym, which you don't have to ever memorize in the systems world. Huge password space. That's not too big, but if it's multi-factor, it's even more. So let's see what they're actually talking about down here. Superior alternative to existing MFA. Okay. So this one could be something that I use to kind of contrast, right? And let's do a thing real quick here. We'll grab up here. One of the nice things about some of these is I can just cite these right here if I need to. So go boom, grab that, right? Oops, I did not mean to do that. Control C, copy. There we go. So I'd go here and I'd say, you know, this. Well, it's not going to be hanging, but that's fine. And then let's just say novel MFA. and empirical. Let's see if this is empirical or not, because that's going to be important to me. Now they've offered a framework, but let's see what is actually going on inside of this thing. It's annoying. Just conceptual model, username, password, image grid. Okay. Okay. Did something. Storage operation. They're saying it's pretty small. It protects against this. This is going to be non. Let's see if they gathered any. Okay, they did do empirical. Right, so this is empirical in that they gathered some data, and then they're kind of looking at that. That's fair enough. Yeah. A lot of times in academia, right, they're pushing the envelope, right? So it's they're just looking at some of the stuff that's out there. So they did total authentication, successful attempts, failed attempts, and then usability across multiple devices. Okay. Yep, you do need more hardware for some of that. Hash values instead of raw images. That's interesting. Reducing privacy concerns. Okay. Conclusion. So let's look at their conclusion and see what their future coming from this would be. Oh, that's annoying. It said, so I have it selected for peer reviewed only, and it says this version has not been peer reviewed. So I wouldn't be able to use this anyways because it's not even peer reviewed. So that's not good. That's annoying because right here, let me show you guys this. I do have it set to peer reviewed, so it's only supposed to show me things that are peer reviewed right now. So that's kind of a hassle. Let's change this. I want to look up. I actually want to see if anybody's done anything with bastions in the last 5 years. So. Because I'm doing essentially around Bastion type systems and kind of interested in some of that. Leith, how's it going? Hey, Leith, I was looking for it the other day. Leith's over on the Twitch side of things. I was looking for, you had mentioned in here that you just got that new role, right? The cloud engineer. I was looking for it down in the Discord, and I was like, oh, shoot, he didn't say it in Discord. So, but congratulations. Hopefully that works out pretty well for you. Oh. Well, that's interesting. I don't necessarily want this. When's this from? This is also right at the edge of what I can do, and they're just using the word Bastion, not that they're doing anything specifically with Bastions as far as that goes. Yeah, bastions as a term aren't widely used. It tends to be more authorization or like a AAA. AAA model, right? Authentication, authorization, and accounting or auditing of systems, right? So, well. This is a typical way that's written out, if it's written out that way. Tribute based, okay, that might be interesting. This is at the end of about what I'd be able to use as well. They're talking about remote auditing. Authorization for establishing privacy preservation, edge-assisted IoT. Yeah, none of these are really. No. Yeah, none of these are in the same vein for what I'm doing. Oh no, you have another interview. Nice, nice. I thought you had gotten it, but it's still a little bit closer, right? That's kind of useful. Which one is this one? Effective domain terms on password security. So this one might be interesting. That's interesting. Okay, yeah. There is a lack of that. So let's take this. Grab this just for now. This might be kind of an interesting one for us to look at. And then we'll say name is generically password security. I also know the name from down here in the bibliography, obviously. But let's see if this is empirical. Let's go read the research a little bit. If you guys haven't read research, a lot of times it's good to read the abstract. This looks interesting to what we're doing. They're talking about password guessing and being able to get in there. And then let's go look at what they're arguing or discussing. Now, if they don't have it here, we should be able to look at it as the PDF. And then King Buns, I'm just grabbing notes for my research for dissertation stuff. I gotta get some stuff turned in here in the next few days, and I'm woefully behind. So security, privacy, and authentication, good. Web application security. These are all right in the same vein of what I'm kind of doing. So they talk about widely adopted authentication method. So they do have some useful things here, I think. Two-factor to make things more difficult, and people choose weak passwords. That's fair, and they are convenient to remember. Now they mention that, and then I would like to use that, but that's down here and cited. This is neither APA nor MLA format for people that are wondering. This is using a research based method. So it's 26 down here is going to be one of their mentioned references, right? So that's coming from that. Fortunately, well, it's not quoted, so I'm going to assume that they've assimilated that in some way or written it themselves. But the point is they're referencing that from there. So that's good. This may also have some good places for me to go look then in the future. So that's one of the nice things about when you read these. Let's go down and look. So what are they doing? They're talking about some passwords and security, studying the effect of domain terms on password security. Okay, cool, useful. Not necessarily relevant. Let's look for, did they gather data? They're looking at some data sets and statistics, but let's see if they actually did any empirical. Did they actually gather data themselves? So here's some information. So it does look like they've looked at some data. They randomly selected some passwords, and then looks like they used 1 million of them. Good. Here's their empirical. So this is an empirical study, yes. Right? So the reason I need that, and you might say, well, Scott, why the hell does it matter if it's empirical or not? Well, because if somebody's going to talk about, there's not only two types of, I'm about to make a gross oversimplification about two large types in research, but I'm just going to make it real quick, and then, obviously you can correct me because there's probably a million other ones. But the two that I generally see are like, people will do a survey of things where it's just terms and terminology and a bunch of other shit. And that's less useful for me and for like a dissertation. What's more useful is when somebody has went and looked at some data and come to a conclusion, because academically I can then either agree with their conclusion and go, yeah, that's interesting, I can build on that, or I can disagree with it, and in that case I can still build on it. But they have looked at data and they have held it in their hand, and then they have said, okay, that's interesting, and then they can kind of go somewhere from that, right? Whether where they go is correct in my mind or not is irrelevant, right? Like, but anyways, my point is they actually did a statistical analysis on real world data sets. So I'm going to put down here statistical analysis on password data sets, right? And maybe this comes up as useful for me in just a literature review, right? Like when you do a dissertation, there's 5 different chapters, and the second chapter is a literature review with 60 to sometimes over 100 references about what's going on, what's being studied. A lot of times we try to have those. See how this is December 2024. We want those within the last 5 years because it's got to be not like hot topics, but things that are like relevant to what we're talking about or doing, right? So here's their data, right? And then let's go down and look. So they've got some interesting things going on with these different systems that they're doing. And then let's go and look at what their conclusions are. So a lot of times with research, we look at the abstract to see if it's interesting. We go and we read their conclusions in future work to see if it's something that kind of points towards things that are relevant to what we're doing, right? Or something that we can build on in our analysis of whatever we're working on, right? So here's their discussion, typically, and this is not a dissertation paper. This is just a normal peer-reviewed paper. Here's their conclusion, right? So in this, we conduct a comprehensive quantitative study, right? So they put in the numbers. Good. Quantitative. I want to know that, right, for my own notes. And a methodology for extracting, measuring, and substituting domain terms and demonstrated its effectiveness through attack experiments. Okay. Okay. What I don't see, though, do they have future, that's usability of a password cracking? That's related work, ethical concerns. Do they have any future? So sometimes in limitations, they'll also do future. So like we could only do certain things. Therefore, when somebody redoes or looks at the study, they could add more. I don't see this here though, so that's okay. Ethical concerns of leaked passwords, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing for me to know. I'm going to say discussed leaked data sets as ethics. That might be kind of useful to me because that's something that I can then discuss in my going forward in my actual dissertation. Password cracking, usability. Okay, we know how those work. That's fine. No attacks in embed. Okay. And then that's essentially their conclusion, right? Right. That's. I mean, there's obviously some other things, but I can take that and say that. Oops. I did not want to do that. Good God, man, get the fuck out of here. There we go. And then we'll just throw that in as like that. This is a direct quote of theirs, right? Is it going to allow me to actually drop the quote in? That's weird. I guess I could have typed it out by now, but that's still kind of annoying. I don't want to really necessarily be writing that kind of stuff out every time. Can I drop that in shit literally anywhere else? That's weird. Huh. That's shit. I guess I'm typing any quotes out that I want. That's fine. Never fear, Boris here. Hey, how's it going? We're not working super hard right now. I'm just working on some notes and stuff, and this one might be useful. So I may grab into this and maybe another thing too, real quick, is sometimes they make assertions. So whenever you're reading research, it's not like I feel, it's not I think. You know, those are incorrect ways to talk about research. It's the data show, the conclusion is this, right? We come to some conclusion in especially in empirical type of research. We come to a conclusion and we say those things, right? We say those things basically aloud. We come to some conclusion. So then when I use this person's information, when I say whatever they're saying, then I might be coming in here and saying, Bao et al. Assert that passwords are, domain problematic, and they propose these other things. Yeah, Boris, yeah, I'm working on stuff for the PhD, yeah. So this Bao et al., right, will probably be cited in there somewhere, especially in my literature review around password security. And the overarching thing that I'll be talking about will be Bastion security. I will be doing empirical research, right? Because all dissertations of my type are systems engineering PhD, right? So that's what I'm working on now. Is I'm gonna be, well, I could do non-empirical, but that I'm more of a go gather some data type guy. No, actually, so what I normally use is Zotero. I really am a big fan of Zotero, and I have a fair amount of things in here already, but this is just me kind of like writing out my own notes, but I do like Zotero quite a bit because it can generate a lot of these things for me as well. No, this is just me. I haven't been on for a while for streaming, and I kind of wanted to hop on and kind of hang out with people, and I have to get this stuff done. Like this is I have this thing called an IRB, which is Internal Review Board, where I basically have to have chapters 1 through 3 done, and because I rewrote most of my chapters 1 through 3, I am woefully behind on any of it, right? Like I am, but I just need to get this hurdle done in the next few days, so that then in the next year I can work through that and get the whole dissertation finished up, start collecting data, because you can't collect any data in most dissertations and most, not all academic research. Once you're done with a doctorate, you can do whatever you want. But when you're doing it for a college and an academic facility, you tend to have you have to do an internal review board just to make sure you're doing things ethically, right? Like you have to show that you have that you understand the implications of things you're gathering. There's two different ways that IRBs tend to work. There's a couple nuances to them as well. That's internal review boards. Mine, since I'm not dealing with people data, is really just a rubber stamp. It's just I could show you guys what the requirements are on it, but it's basically like, yeah, you just rubber stamp it because this dude, he's not collecting people data, he's doing systems data. And then there's little to no, almost just a rubber stamp of collecting empirical system data. Like, yeah, there's no PII. Like, and so some of you guys that have been around for a while, let's back up, because this is probably less interesting for most people. Let me show you guys kind of where my dissertation is focused. Mostly around, where's my, I need to rename this one so it's easier to find, but so, whoops, for you guys that don't know, this is kind of a big part of what it is. It's this idea that we build a bastion of some type, and then, the efficacy of these bastions, I mean, these things, they exist as they exist and people use them, but there's not a lot of research. There's not a lot of stuff around how effective they are and how they work and these kind of things. So obviously I got to give, a bit of a background and a problem statement on why this is an important thing to research and what other people have done recently around it that kind of call for me to keep going forward with that type of research. So if anybody's wondering, if you're like, what's this guy doing? It's really around the Bastion process. Now this is actually our live Bastion server, right? This is how things actually work in the home lab and the Prolog lab for people that connect in. If you guys have never been on like our Discord, somebody just did it the other day. You can go into our like Prolog lab environment and you can drop in a key. And if you do add key in whatever, the bot will add your key in so that you guys can get into the lab environment. And if you guys didn't know that, that's something Fisherman put together. It'll add you, and then you can just log right in. It's right here in the pinned messages how you do that, right? Get access to the lab, and then where you go to connect. And then you'll just jump right into our environment and do whatever lab things you need from the different environments that I give you to use, right? So that's essentially, even though we're just talking kind of dry research right now, that's what we're looking at and thinking about. All right, so I wanted number 24 here. And this one is the one, a large scale study of web habits. So this is an older one here, but I'm going to still grab this, right? And this is a little bit different. So this is one that I specifically, oh, good God, man. Are they not going to let me grab any of this shit? All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to cheat on this one. We're not going to use my college thing. We're going to go, for you guys that don't know, in case you're ever like, hey, you know, Scott never showed me anything useful. I'm going to show you guys something useful right now real quick. Let's move this over here. Let's go over here. Get that out of there. Go right here. If you think I've never shown you anything useful, this is useful. Scholar.google.com has literally everything that's ever been published, you can find here just like you would through like a library. I mean, shoot, I might even argue they have more than most libraries. They have stuff. Okay, so anyways, where I'm going with that is I'm going to take this person slash 24. Was it 22 or 24? I thought it was 24. And I'm going to say helping users create better passwords. I thought it was slash 24. Let's go back up. Let's go look. It was in their initial. So this will be a good article, but they referenced this other article, right? And again, they're using scientific. That's what it's called. They're using scientific notation for this, as opposed to any of these other ones. And it was right here in the introduction. It was 26. So I'm dumb. 26. Let's go look at that real quick. Pop down here. 26 is this one. So password management strategies for online accounts. So password management strategies for online accounts right here. Boom. And this one will probably give me this same. So Shirley Goff, right, from 2006. I see this is their thing here. I can go read about it a little bit. If they have the PDF for it, it's right here, right? It's one of my favorite things. So here's the PDF for it. Boris, yeah, this will be my dissertation should be published late 2026, early 2027 for sure. And then now this is their little documentation, right? And they did some empirical stuff, right? Early, I mean 2007 is pretty early in the internet world. They were an empirical study. They plotted some information, and then they've got a method, right? So what were they doing? There was a 115 question survey. Questions covered demographic information and then things about them. And they use a Likert scale. Likert scales are very common, 5 or sometimes 7, but most people use like a 5-point Likert scale. And it basically is just this. You guys have probably done surveys with these where it's qualitative, but we change it to a quantitative measure. That's what Likert does, right? Makes it it makes it numbers. It's not, I feel pretty good about it. It's, well, that's a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or 5. That's what you got, right? So they've got methods, models. Let's go look at what they said. Here's their results and discussions. So their conclusions, as it were. Some survey implications. So they probably acknowledge some stuff. And then they've got some conclusions about what they found. And typically, a lot of times, they'll also do that there's some other things that should be done for, like, future study, right? And then they give some acknowledgments and then some references. Now, this is older. This is from 2006, so this is outside of, like, a normal range of what you could use. But one of the things about this, here's our APA for this, is that you can use a certain amount of things outside of the 2022 and future, the 5-year limitation, provided you're doing it, I don't want to say sparingly, but it can't be most of your work. So I'm going to grab this anyways, just for good measure here. I get this out of the way here. Right, but it does show that I got it from Google. And maybe I'll just throw some dashes here. That may even turn into a line. Okay, it didn't. Good. There we go. Never fear. You said, or Boris, you said, how do you pick a topic for your dissertation? Well, you just got to read a lot of stuff, and then you have to find something. It's almost like a puzzle piece. You have to find something else that slides in, and is it has to be like somebody else's work. Has to kind of show. Let me show you. I'll show you guys one. This is my older dissertation. Oh, fucking A. Can't find my mouse. Here it is. This is my older dissertation, right? This is the older one that I'm not using anymore, right? And hold on. Get this fucking shit out of the way. I legitimately hate the new way that this works, but hold on. So in my context here, reading about the background of the study, and then like coming to like a problem statement, right? Where's my problem statement? So identification of a problem statement. In this case, prior studies have been conducted on cybersecurity awareness and the effect it has on user behavior. These guys conducted a quantitative correlational study on the students in China using the knowledge, attitude, behavior model, and they validated that. And then another one. So you have to find a few basically like puzzle pieces that fit, and then you push in your next piece. So when I was originally doing my dissertation, it was on this concept of how cybersecurity training. So this was when it was a doctorate of quantitative analytics, right? I've switched over to systems engineering, so now it's not going to be this generic, right? And then this is some other people that have done non-quantitative studies on the subject. So basically like the different puzzle pieces that mine connects into, right? And then the problem statement was here. It is what I think down here somewhere. It's like, here's my theoretical foundations and things that I was doing with this, but and then here were my variables that I was going to be gathering, and then the ways that the scores were going to work, and then some of my questions, like what are my hypotheses, like what are my research questions, and then how they affect, because this hasn't been researched. You need to find something that's very similar to things that have been researched but has not yet been researched. It is not known if and to what extent a difference between social education levels affects cybersecurity awareness levels in male or female students and professionals in the United States, right? And then work down through there. And I had more to work out on some of this stuff, but this was my and then how did I pick quantitative or qualitative, and then kind of go from there, right? So that's how I had picked my other one. No, Boris. No, it's you legitimately pick anything you want, but it has to further recent 5-year previous research. So in my case, when I was looking at this one here, this guy did an empirical study of password security stuff. I could build on that if he had said that there were specific things that should be researched, right? And then I go and I find a few of those, and it helps me like model out a need or what we call a problem space for future research. That's what it is, Boris. You can't just pick anything. You can't just be like, well, I want to study, this type of thing or that type of thing. No, it has to be. Remote access methods. Let's see if anybody has some of these, and then another big part of this is like I go to this and I read all of their research and just keep building from there, because they obviously probably have recent research as well. Now I can also come here and I can go down to, I can go to the academic thing here, and this is another one that I have to do for my notes as well. And I can say I want dissertations on systems engineering, right? So what are things that have been looked at? Now, you can't use as a model or as a as I was talking about that problem space in recent research. Systems dissertations are not peer reviewed. So what does that mean? That means that they're not like going in an academic journal. They are reviewed often by college professors and that kind of stuff, but they're not peer reviewed in the industry with like a double blind peer review process. So they can't be used as that basis. But you say, well, then Scott, why would you waste any time in dissertations? Well, because a dissertation may be talking about the same exact thing that I'm wanting to do in that similar area, and they will already have went and gathered 150 to 300 references that I can then go use, right? You're not copying from anybody. You're just saying, "Oh, this person has blazed a trail and done some of this research. Let me go read this research and pull out the ones that are useful." Like this one's going to be useful for me, and I probably will go back through later and pull more of their things. Like we also found this one, and this one was older, empirical. If I could spell. Yes, right. And then so it's older, but it is empirical, and looks at password policy. And I probably want to go grab some stuff from there, some research from there. And then also, as I'm reading these, what I'll tend to do is I'll load them up into Zotero, because Zotero is just a great note-taking tool, which pulls a lot of these out. But I'm not as great at putting the notes in. I just wanted to kind of like write some of these and get some of these set up and look at these. So this one is, let's see, this is dissertation or thesis, sure. And I want to set also in my search. Let's do an advanced search. So we do want systems engineering. We do want dissertation, excuse me. And then I might have to do like an advanced search. Where's my advanced part? Filter. And say we do want in the last, actually I might want dissertations in the last 12 months, because then they will be adhering to the last 5 years. So let me filter this and say last 12 months here. So, then they're going to also be adhering to that same type of thing. So cybersecurity goals for cyber physical system conceptual design. This is interesting. It's a dissertation or thesis. And then we can go and read about what this person was talking about or looking at or whatever. Also, I probably can make that, I can't see my screen. I can also make that probably a little bigger for you guys too. Let me get this out of the way. Introduction and background. Let's go look real quick at so they're doing the same thing, introduction and background, and then they have some improving things. I want to look at, in the abstract, it leverages systems thinking, so they're using MBSE, which is a common systems engineering methodology, organizational and technical challenges in early stage secure system development. Now they are just first research question of system analysis using systems thinking tools such as iceberg models, causal loop diagrams, and system modeling is conducted. Okay. They're looking for a weak security design within cyber physical systems. Okay. And then they go and they dig in on some other stuff. I want to see real quick, maybe up here in their acknowledgments. So this is a Doctor of Philosophy for Colorado State for systems engineering. So this is similar one to mine, right? And then this is their abstract, right? What are they doing? And then we can go down and we can read acknowledgments. Good. This is similar to kind of how mine is, where you've got a little bit of an introduction at the beginning, and then they're talking about specific design within the teams. They also, interestingly enough, also get to use a different model. I'm going to be using APA formatting, which is kind of the academic standard. I'm surprised this college is using, not all colleges are allow you to use a scientific method. So this is a scientific type method for their stuff. All right, let me go back. Let me go back to the top up here. And since this is theoretical, they probably didn't gather any data, right? So they're looking at the body of knowledge for systems engineering, primarily the area of security by design for cyber physical systems, more specifically contributions to utilize systems thinking and model-based systems engineering. Okay. They're walking through the exact same things they said. The dissertation provides a novel contribution centered around two primary research questions. What recommendations can improve cyber physical systems design teams with respect to security? And a hypothesis secure designs can be implemented through early system security goal solicitation. All right. Now, did they gather any data here, though? That's the interesting thing. They have their research questions, sure, but it doesn't look like they actually gathered any data. Work utilizes Popper's falsification principle to validate the hypotheses in secure system design can be that. So I want to look at what this principle is because I am not familiar with this principle right here. So let's go look at what that is. Are any of you guys familiar with the Popper's falsification principle? I've never heard of that before in my life. All right, I had not heard that theory before. Scientific criterion stating theory is scientific only if it can be proven false through observation or experimentation. Huh. That seems like interesting. Okay. Yeah, I had not heard that used in that context, or I had not heard that term before. All right, so he kind of says, well, I'm not going to do statistical work on it because you'd have to prove it false. So that's interesting, I guess. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so he calls for some future work, talking about proposed methodologies, interesting stuff here. But again, you can't really use, just so everybody knows, you can't really use somebody's dissertation on as part of your research. But what you can use a lot of times is what they are using here down in their bibliography. So sometimes this will point you to other things. So they're using some autonomous driving stuff, cybersecurity systems. So this one may be interesting for me to look at. This is some library, some book they had. Lessons from Stuxnet. If you guys remember that, that was the one that attacked the... Did I get dropped from you guys? I apologize if I did. I think I look like I'm still online, but I might not be. Mainly here, I'm going to look to see if they have anything that's within my window, so things that would work for me. This one might be kind of useful. So defense standardization program, right? What's going on in here that might be somewhat useful to me, right? And then that's up for 11. And let me see if I can copy this and drop it over here or not. Department of Defense Handbook. Defense standardization. They don't have a date on that, but I think that's when he referenced it, which was 2024. apps.dtic.mil. Let's see what this thing is. Now, things like this, these are not empirical. These are not peer-reviewed. But you can still slide a certain amount of these, a pretty small amount of these typically, into whatever type of research you're doing because they're published by some organization. That one might be less useful to me. All right. 2022. This one might be interesting. Ah, this is from NIST. So NIST is a big part of a lot of my stuff is around NIST type. NIST has quite a few things that I kind of use and or look at. So this one's a bit dated though. So this is from 2018. I need a newer version of this. That looks like the right one, but he's definitely got the date wrong on that one. Because my date here shows 20. Has this one been updated? 2016. He's got 2020. Is there a newer version of this? This thing says 2018. Let's go look. Nope, this one says 2018. Huh. Wonder where he got a newer version of that. Draw date. They got a new one? They got a newer one up? Obsoleted by this one. Even this one's earlier than that one shows. Volume 1, Revision 1. No, this is even later. That's strange. Volume 2 is still. So, I don't know, it looks like those times are different, but I don't know. Maybe that didn't matter too much to him. It looks to me like that's off, though. You can still use NIST stuff like this, though. So I will probably still use this, but it will be considered a little more outside of the thing. So I can go here. I should be able to drop this into my Zotero and go for my dissertation stuff, right? And then now this should show up in Zotero right here, right? This is by them. Where did that go? Should, as best as possible, show, yeah, there's their information right there. Ron, here's all the authors. And then I should be able to right click this and export, create a bibliography for this. Hit OK. And I can go drop that in my notepad. Do I need to go drop it in a separate notepad? Maybe not. But that is now this. And then there's my NIST standard. But again, it's from this is 2021. So I guess that's OK. And then what is that thing saying? Then we come over here and maybe we look at what this thing's saying. Right, what's the abstract on it? Software engineering. Engineering of Trustwork Systems. Right. And there may be some useful stuff in here around. Let's go look real quick. All right, systems, what are cyber? So I have to have a definition section, so a lot of good definitions can come out of here. So, and then maybe come over here and presents a cyber resiliency engineering framework, conceptual framework for understanding and applying cyber resiliency, a concept for conceptual. Okay. So let's go see what this framework looks like. Target audience. Good, 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 good. I want to see. Here's our goals. Here's our implementations. And do they have a good... interesting. Systems life cycle. Life cycle stages. Okay. Critical infrastructure for internet things. Okay, sure. I want to see if they have any good. Advanced persistent threats. Resiliency analysis. Yeah, this one's going to be useful for a lot of these pieces, I think, because I'm building a thing. And then here's a bunch of references that I may also use from this. So references. And then I'm also going to say model some of this for the Bastion build process and evaluation. Okay. So there's some good stuff in here. Also, this is captured. I'm going to note here too. Right, so I've captured this in my Zotero, which will also be useful for me in the future. All right, and then look, there's all these other things to go reference. So that's pretty useful. All right, let's get that out of the way for now. We could do some more Scholar Google stuff as we need. That's always useful. Let's see if this guy had any other things that were useful for me. What is systems thinking? It's all system stuff. This one might be interesting. What is this guy talking about? So scholar.google. And often this, I don't know why this is like this. Normally I have this in dark mode. So I apologize that my Scholar Google is not in dark mode. You know what? I got an extension for that. Sorry guys, I normally leave stuff in Dark Reader so it doesn't blast you guys so terribly. But there we go. Grobdor, what am I doing? I'm just grabbing notes and stuff for my dissertation. Adding some reference stuff, and I'm not doing any writing right now. I'm just grabbing notes and throwing things in. I've got a lot of stuff to write. I have to get past a IRB hurdle, which is an internal review board, and I really have to get that part done so that I can move on into my developing like what my research is going to look like. So they're going to rubber stamp it because I'm not using people, but because of the fact that I'm so far along in the process. It's kind of a long story, but I'm about halfway done with the dissertation, and I switched some of the things I was writing about. So now I have to go and just redo a lot of it, for lack of a better term. Yeah, and normally what we do around here is a lot of Linux, right? We do kind of all the Linux and hang out and do a fair amount of that kind of stuff. But just today and for, you know, stuff going forward, well, at least for today, I am heavily working on this stuff because I got to get this in. So let's go right here and let's say show systems. I want to see if they have this one, which is by M. Reed and Winstead. I don't see. M. Reed and Winstead. M.A. Reed. Nope. I could, if this thing will let me copy, I could grab all of this and throw it up here. Google's pretty good about this stuff, if it can find it. Requirement solicitation. Okay. This could be useful. Let's go read this one a little bit. So requirements of this, and then it says if I want to cite this, how would I do that? And if I were using, let's go look at the PDF. System requirements engineering process. So they talk about a systems requirement engineering process, which is something like this. Right. So this one might be good. Let's grab this one. Let's throw this into Zotero under our dissertation for, we'll call this for HPC. And we'll go grab this real quick. Boom. Grab bibliography for it. Boom. Actually, I'm going to move this over here so this is out of the way. And I'm going to pull my other notes back up over here because I want my notes here. Okay. I'm just going to throw some new of these little ones. And then I'm going to say this has a go find this. Let's look at some of these. Standard 4S. So this is secure, cyber, right? SCRE. If I could spell engineering right, that would be good. And then they also have this SC. So they use cyber. Right, because you have to have, so when you do a dissertation, you have to add in all of these terms and stuff like this. Typically, you have like something near the top. New World Andy, how's it going? We are just kind of working through some, what most people would probably consider relatively boring stuff. Normally, I'm doing a little more high-speed stuff. If you guys are looking for high-speed stuff, there's, the courses. The courses are out there. Systems admin, security engineering course. If you guys need these links, here's the links, right? This is what we normally do around here, right? We work through getting people into Linux. So systems administration is just generic Linux, right? Like these topics. And then there's, but as an administrator in a company, right? That's what this focus is. Not just doing Linux, right? We can all do Linux, right? Linux is, I don't want to call it the easy part, but it kind of is. And then, security engineering, which pitted us against a bunch of the topics that we do as security engineers, building out Linux systems. So that's another one. And then we're building the automation course. And actually, I need to let the guys know I'm going to pause this course until early January, just so that we're down through 9. We've done 9. I'll probably put out. I can't even do this week. I'll put out the questions for 9, and then I have to record 6, 7, 8, 9, and then maybe even 10 before the end of the year. And then we're going to pause, and then we're going to do the last ones in January and February. So I'll let the guys know that too. But if anybody's here and working through the courses, I've been kind of dropping off, but I've got these labs mostly all done. But I need to go and do the presentations for you guys. So that'll be coming. But I do have to this is very important for me to finish up this college engineering stuff because, I want to finish my dissertation and be done with it. So let's pull this back up. Where did it go? Back over here. IEEE Explore. What was this term they were using? They kept using this SCRE. So we know SCRE and we know CPS in the context of this, but they were using this other one that I had not seen before, which was like SCEP. So STPA is Systems Theoretical Process Analysis. That's a good one to probably put in there. Systems I'm just looking for more things to add to my overall, as I'm doing this discussion, right? We're just, you just spackle a lot of stuff on there as far as this goes. I might grab this and say, look this up. Right, that NIST standard there, and I'll come back up here. This is the one I'm actually working on. I know STRIDE. STRIDE's a very common one: spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosed with denial of service, elevation of privilege. That's like a STRIDE model, similar to like an attack MITRE model. This one's the one that was getting me SREP, and I might just be able to copy this, which would be super nice. There we go. Okay. That's even better. I like it. I like it when a plan comes together like that. So, yeah, this is maybe one of the more boring things that I've done on stream, but I don't know. I gotta get this done. If I don't do it, then I don't get my degree. So, security quality. I like the square one. And square looks kind of like this. 9 steps. So let's go. Oh, that's going to be a hassle. Oh, well, we got to do it. And there we go. It's probably about as fun as watching paint dry for most of you guys, but this is the process, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It's can be somewhat long and boring. Now they're talking about another one. What is this one called? Firesmith introduces 12 types of security requirements. Who is Firesmith? And he did it, and this is an older one. So we'll look at him. And also, this is not... Right, I got to fix that because it's not APA. And his talk, so if we're quoting him directly, we're going to just use his, we'll use this here. Boom, right for him. These 12 include, kind of a hassle, but got to do it. And I may use any or all of these, probably not most of these models, but I can at least nod to the models while I do other things. One of the things, so it's actually important when you think about, there's this idea of like, how do we know anything? There's a term for it, but I forget what it is right off because I'm a systems engineer. I'm not a philosopher. But there's this idea of like, how do you know anything in this world, right? And that is like, where knowledge comes from, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that we often do when I go and maybe I use one of these models and maybe I even define my own model, whatever I'm doing for this, what I might do is nod to these other people whose models I'm not using. And that's another effective way of saying, hey, this is the way I do it. And then you contrast what academically the things other people have said or done versus the way you're doing it. And then you can show why you think your way is better. Because again, I was saying this earlier, like academics is a lot of assertion and then argumentation. And people think all the time like argumenting is like arguments are how we argue online, where we just talk over each other and fucking fight and nobody likes each other and stuff. But that's not what argumentation is in an academic sense. It's I say the strengths of my position, and sometimes I contrast it to what I think are the weaknesses of your position, and then you get some time to present your strengths of your position versus the weaknesses of mine, and we kind of, it's almost like open kimono. We let the chips fall where they lay, or however, whatever little latitude you want to use for that. But the idea is, you know, we come up with these other, we come up with, you know, which way is the best, right, in this concept. So, and then they've got model-based systems engineering, MBSE, right? Do I have that as one of these ones? Nope. That's a very common one. Stride establishes common language for documenting threats. So we might mention Stride here, and then say that about it, right? That's a direct quote from them, but that's also the purpose of Stride. So that's something that we can note if we want to. And one of the things too is we can also mention that, and then also say, and this is, you know, give a nod to where you got that information from or whatever. What is STPA? So causal loop diagram, CLD. A good one to maybe mention here. Causal loop diagrams. Let's go with Stride. Stride is this. Right. That's a pretty common model, by the way. You'll see Stride often in any type of security engineering type stuff. So I think this is good. This one's also very high level, like a reference. They also have got this square methodology. That's a little different than the other ones we were looking at, right? Here's square right there. Good. Okay. And again, we might not use any of these. We might not use Firesmith's model, but we at least know it. Here's the Stride model here. And we can even, with these, we can gather, right? And we always reference, so this is why we have the reference here. If I do use their drawing in some way, then I can always reference their table, right? So I can say something like this. Boom. Copy. And then for Stride right here, boom. Something like that. So then, you know, as we're talking about it later, we can show what the things are that we're doing. And the Stride model probably will be useful for Bastion stuff, because the concept of what we're doing within our Bastions will be especially authentication, make sure they are who they say they are, authorization to give them access to what they're supposed to be able to have access to, and then non-repudiation to make sure that they're maybe talking to the hosts and the systems that they think, and then all of these other things, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So this is all the component pieces of the AAA model and the CIA model, which are kind of the high-arching system stuff if you're doing security. CIA, of course, is your confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And then your AAA model is your authentication, authorization. And the last one is auditing. But in this case, they've got this other one, which is non-repudiation, means I know I'm talking to the person that I think I'm talking to. Non-repudiation in modern systems tends to be X509 certificates and certificate authority type models, right? TLS and HTTPS type. TLS 1.2 and TLS 1.3, they allow us to not reference, but they allow us to validate that the other person is who they say they are through a trust model and the certificate authorities. I have all kinds of we have all kinds of talks that I've done on that stuff for you guys. Let's see if they have. We know all those. So conclusions or contributes to consolidate, resource, and equip systems engineers to elicit security requirements for CPS design and development, key security engineering standards. So this is good. This is basically just systems theory and information. And then they give me a lot of good references here. So this one's going to be good references, right? So this is a good reference doc. And so this would be a good reference and what we would call like glossary doc. So that's kind of what we're doing here. Look up NIST. All right. Did I ever find this one? I don't know if I ever found that one. All right. So we're just moving through these and adding kind of more and more as we go. Did we get this one? This one is in our Zotero notes, right? So I have this here, security requirements, good. And it's in my dissertation for HPC type stuff. Let's go look at this one too. This was our brute force one. We found this one the other day. It's also from 2025, so this one is pretty relevant here for things that I want to look at. But this is brute force attack mitigation on remote access servers via software-defined perimeter. So this is another way to do it. The reason I took this one, and I think this one is one of the ones that I really wanted, was I think this one has, let's see if this one is empirical. It's got a bunch of good information in there about techniques and references. This one is also done in the scientific notation. You guys will note that. A lot of people prefer reading documentation in scientific. If you're not in academics, you probably prefer this because then you can go read them at your leisure. They're not just like thrown in your face of like what the references are less important than the data that are being presented, is the way that you think of this. As opposed to if you looked at like mine from earlier, which we were not necessarily going through mine, but you know, what's being said, I'm referencing back to the people who said it and where it comes from, and this is the important thing. Well, it's also important what we're talking about, but it's important that, you know, the people that did the original information, they're recognized as well, right? So that's kind of a thing to note. Software defined architecture. I want to see, did they gather any data here? Nope, they have, but they do have how some of this communication happens. This is very similar to like transport layer security, handshaking, and those kind of things. So they do have some good models in here. They have some good information, but I don't know if they gathered any data. Let's go look if this is empirical in that they actually gathered data. Here's some experimental evaluation. So I do think they gathered data. So let's go look. Experimental procedure involves phases, demonstrates efficacy of the proposed software-defined perimeter framework. Okay, so this is an empirical study. They did gather data. They set some stuff up. They did some throughput. They did some cool little, what are these called? These are called the, there's a term for these, not wireframe, but there's a name for these type of exact models. But then that gives us kind of the weight of the things. Okay, latency packet loss. Now let's go down here and see CPU use. So let's see when they got into. They did gather a lot of empirical data, which is good. So here's a discussion limitation. So there's a lot of stuff around, and I'm going to be mostly doing bastions with SSH, so this is good. This is the limitations of their study. Centralized nature of controller could bottleneck large-scale implementations, right? So yes. Right. And then I want to look down to, so here's conclusions and future work. Nice. Paper introduce and enhance SDP architecture intending to actively secure RAS, that's remote access, right? By leveraging SPA dynamic control and active threat mitigation capabilities. We validated the proposed practical lightweight protocol. Prototype implemented in Docker to thwart any DDoS type scenarios. This is good. This is actually directly related to my study, so that's awesome. But do they have future needed to scalability, seamless integration, and legacy infrastructure, continuously adapting to new cyber threats? Future work should focus on expanding SDP capability to additional protocols and post-quantum analysis, post-quantum schemes and algorithms across a myriad of verticals for those in IoT. So, and to catch up with comprehensive. That's interesting. Okay.
Dr. Scoot.
Not yet, Control Byte. We're working on that. And then our research will be interesting because it'll be looking at some of this. So empirical, yes. Future work. And this is their exact quote. So I'll quote their stuff, right? Because we do want to give them that. And then they've got their data available, which is awesome. They also have a bunch of their different stuff they did, which I think is also awesome. And let me find, so advanced tools, enhanced user experience. Yeah, yep. So this one will be good. I may even use this as part of problem statement, right? People are looking for alternatives to the current SSH and Bastion type models, right? But I am going to be testing the efficacy of our current Bastion scenarios. We do this all the time in our home lab, right? In the Prolog lab, which is like how secure are these things, and we're gonna gather data around it and make sure that things are doing what we expect. So this will be, I mean, this is interesting to me. Hopefully it's interesting to some of you guys, because like we practically apply these things. I use these things all the time in government systems. These are things that I build and do. So, testing their efficacy is I think valuable. All right. So anyway, so that one, I think this one's good. I think this is one that we had found. What was this one? This one was, so let's go look at this one as well. So this one came from some study we were doing the other day. And I'm going to throw this down here. Oops. Copy this to our clipboard. Boom. And you might say, well, Scott, aren't you just taking your notes from one place to another? Sure, but this is kind of starting to refine some of my thoughts and being able to pull stuff in that we're going to be doing as I start to do a lot of the writing. So I have the writing open on a different thing. So, okay, so this one is cybersecurity threats are becoming more intricate, requiring preemptive actions to safeguard digital assets. Good. Examines the function of honeypots as critical infrastructure for threat detection, analysis, and mitigation. All right. So this one is a pretty modern. When was this one? 2025. So this is pretty recent. Threats, honeypots, and how we use them. Introduces a new method for honeypot comparative analysis. Good. Given threat landscape. There's that. This one is empirical. Actually, this one is peer reviewed. Yes. All of them that we're looking at are peer reviewed, so that's important. Let's go look at what data they gathered down here. This is kind of what their system looks like, right? Okay, cool. They've got high interactive honeypots, so they've got a lot of good. So good definitions of honeypots in here that we might be using. Because you can't just go grab, dictionary type stuff. You have to reference from a paper. So that's good. Hybrid honeypots, these kind of things, compares them. Good. I want to see, I'm pretty sure I only grabbed this because this had empirical data in it. If I didn't grab it because of empirical data, then, all right. So in-depth, okay, this one is non-empirical. So what this did was this just grabbed some different types of things that were out there. So this is non-empirical. That's less good, right? We can't use that as like one of our bases for our like problem statement. But it is comparative analysis. It's useful. It's interesting. It's recent, right? So it shows things that are going. It does give some best practices and recommendations, and sure, it gives some models and stuff. Models to reference, right? But this does not give us, this doesn't give us a real conclusion. Mocha Tech Plays, how's it going? Thanks for the raid. Hopefully this stuff is useful to you guys. We are just reading research right now. I wouldn't call this maybe super interesting to a lot of people if I had to guess, but we're just kind of hanging out, and normally we're doing Linux, and normally we're talking about all this other stuff, but right now we're just kind of looking through stuff that I've either found or I am finding actively for my dissertation work. All right, so they do have some future work here and things that need to happen. And this one is probably going to be very important. This is a quote from them, right? So we always say the quotes, but this idea that integrating honeypots with other security tools like IDSs and IPSs is a critical future direction. Well, that's one of the things that I will 100% use, because we're using honeypots in the sense of our Bastion nodes. So we use Bastion nodes already to protect our systems, but then having honeypots built into them that are doing intrusion detection and intrusion prevention, that's useful. Also, what might come from this, because I've been over this research for like a year and a half, guys. I've been doing the dissertation for a while. I have yet to find a place that just kind of gathers and presents or has reference for people around the types of attacks that are trying to come into our system. So I think that would be a useful one. And I had kind of set this up with the group last year, where we were doing like this thing called dungeoning, and we were allowing whatever to just drop into our system and go into its own little system, and drop whatever payloads it wanted, do whatever actions it wanted, and then we were just gathering information. But we weren't. I mean, obviously, I can't gather any information for my dissertation until I get past this next part, which is my IRB. But it is good. I think this is good and useful for us around. So this is the honeypots, right? We'll even bold and underline this here, because that's what we're working on in this one. All right, so that's good. What were some other ones? Let's go look at this Wong et al. One. When was this one from? 2024, so this is also very relevant to our overall thing that we're working on. So we're going to move this down here and then say this one was automated attack response framework. And what were we doing with this one? What was this one talking about? Automated attack response framework named ARF. That could be something that we look into. Right. And then where does this get applied? Let's see if this is empirical or not. So this is is this empirical or not? And let's go look at, so they're talking about coming in custom honeypot environment. Honeypot sim supported gaming by simulation protocol supports SSH protocol response. Okay, so they're using port 22, and then they're doing the attack miter, all these kind of things, and then they have some models and some good drawings. But let's see if they actually gathered data. They had some attack techniques classifications, and then what was happening with those types of attacks, and then they did some label sampling, so it's good. Good little math volume stuff in here. But did they actually grab information? So here's their experiment. They had open ports for SSH, FTP, and RDP. So that's 22, 20, and 21, and then 3389. Those were the open ports. And they captured any traffic. Exception is detected by the attack agent. Cumulative reward for honeypot agent reads the threshold A. And then they did some game simulation theory. So that's actually good to know. Oh, it says it right there. Experiment configuration. So they did gather real data. That's good. Honeypot was doing whatever it was doing, and it is empirical, yes. Good. So then, can I use this? The question then is, can I use this to go and look. Let's go look now. Now, once we know it's empirical, we go down to the end and we look at its conclusions. Focused on effectively enhancing the interactive honeypots when faced with multi-step sequential attack chains and dynamic games. Okay. They move some stuff forward. They say, okay, in future research work, we will follow aims at the attack agents of the R framework. We'll further consider introducing the vulnerability exploits methods of the CVE and CNVD. So that's the National Vulnerability Database from NIST, right? For the defense agents, based on reasonable response, we'll introduce a collaborative defense mechanism for the framework. According to functional characteristics of different honeypots, will achieve synergy and complete real defense active. Okay. So, this is their future research right here. And on the defensive side, which will be, because we're setting up, we're running, we're not even looking up, we're currently running the Bastion nodes, right? So, we have here, where was the defensive one? That was active defense. Okay. So they're saying maybe go from there. Future work. Right. Put some quotes. Put some quotes around that because that's a quote from them. And if we end up using it, we want to give the proper attribution to exactly where we found it, right? Because when you quote in APA, you have to actually give the page number of your quote, so that's kind of useful. And then here's the other thing, and this is one of the things that I think is important for this, is now as we get into this and as we start kind of running on this, I have a recent document that has similar things to what I kind of want. Now, honeypotting isn't the goal of this, it's bastions, but bastions can be done as honeypots, so that's important. And now I have all these other ones to go reference. So I'm going to start looking into some of these and see what these things show and how interesting these are to kind of what we're going to set up for our research and what we're doing. Okay, guys, I need to take a quick break. I'm going to take a little stretch and walk around, so I'm going to put my hourglass up. If anybody has any questions, obviously you can hop in the Discord. We have quite a bit of stuff. So I'm going to say exclamation mark Discord. And we'll go 10 minutes. We'll take a little bit longer break. Walk around, guys. Stretch your legs out. Feel free to hang out in the Discord. There's a lot of people talking down in Discord about all kinds of fun stuff. Oh, excuse me. But I'm going to go walk around a little bit. I'll be back. Give me some water too, probably. All right. Still not back yet, but I do have some snacks. All right. And Chingopa, I might have missed your message earlier, but hopefully you found the labs. I kind of want to remake that little penguin. And when I'm eating something, he has something in his hands like he's munching. I think that'd be funny. One of these days. Probably not when I'm super behind on my dissertation. Let me show you guys while we're sitting here. Obviously, a lot of stuff going on in the Discord. Got a lot of events coming up. Bash study group every Saturday. Security or engineering course. This will be in Unit 10 this week. So actually, the next thing I'll do is I'll go put the discussions up for them. Unit 9 and 10. And then we'll be done. That course will be done. Automation course, I think I'm going to call off until probably the 3rd of January. Just because, you know, everybody's busy. I'm busy. And it'll give people time to catch up because people have been very behind, I think, on like the discussion. I've been very behind on my part too. But we've been meeting every week though. Like we have, I can show you guys, we can go in the notes and like, we have notes of labs that we've been doing together and like, you know, all this cool stuff. We were doing Werewolf the other day. And then we're going to harden the system with Werewolf next. Which will be, so it'll be the same set of steps again. And we'll just keep building out those labs. So Unit 9 and 10 labs are pretty straightforward. But then when we're done with that, let me think. Yeah, we'll probably hold off on the automation course until the new year, just so I can really hammer it again. And we can get all back organized and get our feet back under us. Really, it'll be hardening, and then we'll be doing patching, network devices. We're going to do that. We're probably going to set up, I'm going to try to get GNS3 set up in the environment so you guys can configure like some network devices, but over the, you know, using a tool. And then remediation and reporting drift, and then CI/CD pipelines and stuff. And then we'll just troubleshoot a lot at the end and kind of work on. I've got a pretty cool little project I'm going to have us do for this one, I think. So the course has been, you know, kind of languishing in this area, but we've been doing the labs and stuff. I just need to go and turn them into, the recordings only go up to Unit 5 right now. So, you know, anybody that's interested in the courses, they're all free, right? These are all free. Books are all online. Everything, the guys put together these awesome books for you guys that show you how to do, you know, whatever you're doing. You know, if you're doing any of the Linux admin course, the whole thing is right here, right? You can go in and look at the worksheet for this, and then it's got the recording and all that kind of stuff. How we do our automation in the environment. All right. I'm still sitting here eating for a minute. And then we'll go. All right. Where was my... Yeah, let's go look at some of these next. Some of these might be kind of interesting. 2021's a little outside of my this one's going to be interesting for me right here, unit number 4, which is the real-time user behavior emulation. That'll be interesting. That's going to be a big part of it, hopefully. Let's go look at this one here in a second. But we'll wait for my last 33 seconds to roll out. Eat my last little snack that I went and got from downstairs. Guess I could also put the music back on. Music's pretty chill. Sometimes it just gets in the way though. All right. Again, lots of good stuff going on. I haven't been running the late night bash study. I've just had it up there. But one of these days I'll probably pop it on and actually run it. And then people have been doing a study group. I don't think this one's been running very often though, so this is kind of for you guys. And then the writer's room is every Sunday. But they also probably won't run this until the new year again because I haven't been putting out as much material. So, all right, that's there. Nick Hill said, man, I wish to complete all these but don't have time for a college assignment. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to get some buddies together. You know, we've got little study groups inside of the Discord and stuff, and sometimes you just got to get like-minded people and sit down and read research, I guess. That's kind of what I'm doing. And I'm doing a method, by the way, some of you guys might think like, oh man, this guy's a madman. One, I've never told you I wasn't a madman. Just remember that. I'm insane, guys. But that being said, the method I'm using for reading research is I'm looking at the abstract. Then I'm validating that it's empirical, meaning they've done some type of study. And then once I know that it's empirical, what I'm doing from there is I'm going to their conclusions and future research and seeing if it's got something that kind of... The best way I can describe it is... I got to show you guys this scene from a movie. Have you guys ever seen the movie The Patriot? There's a scene where the pastor dies. And as he dies, let's see if there's any images of it. He's the preacher or the pastor. He might be the preacher. That might be. But as he dies, he throws his gun up. And Heath Ledger's character, so he goes to shoot the guy and he gets killed. And then he throws his gun up in the air and the other dude catches it. And then it's so stupid, but it's literally a scene that'll make your blood boil. But when that scene happens, like that's kind of how I think of research, where as somebody runs out of time to complete whatever they're doing or whatever they're studying, they throw it up in the air and the next person catches it and goes along. That's kind of, you know, for lack of a better term, the way that that's working. So let's look and see if we can find this one right here. In Scholar Google, right? Scholar Google is there for anybody that wants it. Enhancing Fidelity. Yeah, so we do have this one. This will be a good one, I think, for us to go and read and look at. It's pretty recent, right? It's what was this one? 2023. So this is very recent as far as that goes. We can, before we even get into it, we can go look at the citing it via APA. Here's the citation in APA. Right, boom, and get rid of this. And we could always go to home, format, and then, right, it's all the same format. And then we get this out of the way and we go drop into here. And we may be able to read it all right here sometimes. But probably we want to go look at it as the PDF. But what's it saying? Effective tool widely adopted in security systems, providing rich information to lure attackers. However, honeypots are not foolproof. So honey mustard. Oh, that's interesting. So it's actually doing something. I'm all for, in my environments, I give people full access, right? And I let them deploy whatever they want. But let's see what they're doing here. So they've got some threat models. They've got some system detection, action keywords. There's some interesting stuff going on, maybe a workflow of how their tool works. We can go look. Somebody's coming into an environment. That's less useful for us, but let's see then. They set up a study. So this is empirical. This is going to gather real information, right? So empirical. Yes, right? Yes, it's empirical. And then let's go look at what they're actually doing in here. And they have some system overhead and then some related work. And here's our discussion for future work. For long-term observations, fiscal action, user tracking it. Plan to create various profiles to increase the successful rate of detection. So they're specifically, that's actually interesting. This is a fun one. So if anybody wants this one, this one's kind of fun. They're actually allowing them to view fake users. So that's kind of funny. That's completely different than what we'll be doing. But that's still a fun one. And this is right, that's what it did. So the experiment showed that it worked. And this was just people essentially guessing, if you ask me. So that's less useful. And then they were trying to figure out. See, that one. It is still empirical. It's just not great empirical. YouTuber said, "Love that you aren't needlessly allergic to Windows." I will use any productivity tool that I need. YouTuber, I'll tell you, I probably had more people mad over the years that I just use PuTTY to get into Linux than anything. They're like, "You could use any other tool," and I'm like, "Yeah, but PuTTY does what I need, right?" So like. Yeah, I am not a ardent desktop Linux. I mean, I would tell you guys what I am is an enterprise Linux engineer, right? Like I build high performance compute systems for just big projects. But I use Linux for Linux that's production ready, and I've yet to find a desktop that's production ready. So like that kind of stuff. Yeah, Nick Hill, that's a good one. I'd say I do the abstract, I look at the conclusion, and then I look at future stuff. Yep, that's my quick way to run through a lot of this. This one is, guys, this one's less interesting to me from this perspective. So I want to say less interesting, but still to be referenced from a what techniques for security are being implemented, especially with honeypots, because honeypots are they're a specific kind of like concept that does come up in bastions, but we're not really doing that. Arch Nightly releases, yeah. Well, King Buns, it's funny. I've actually thought about doing some of the stuff in. Where, what I don't have, guys? Oh man, I don't even have my Proxmox environment up. Do I have Proxmox? Where's this at? I don't even have this environment on right now. Well, it's on, but it's funny you say that, King Buns, because one of the things I've been meaning to do is deploy this and make some of these things rebuild nightly, kind of like you just said, but almost as like a not a rebuild. Yeah, I have so many like things that I need to do. Well, I have the one thing I need to do, which is finish the dissertation. But there's all these things I want to do, King Buns, and like all these like, and then I've been focused, like all my extra time's been focused on the automation course. So then I don't even get to talk about the other things because I have to get these ones built. Although these ones are built, I just have to put them into the. I have to record all these too. So for people that missed it, anyways, yeah, that's. My time and what I want to do is never as good as what I like need to go do, right? Like I want to go do all the fun things, but then I just end up playing video games the whole time instead. So let's go move this Proxmox thing over here so we don't lose it. This one is interesting, but not necessarily. It is an empirical study, so that's important. Let's jump out of this one now. Oh, real quick, when you look at any of these, there's always the potential again that one of these things down here might be kind of good. Right? There may be some other things. This is probably an empirical work. Maybe not an empirical work, but it's an early work that's about catching the insider threat at the 19th annual IEEE Computer Security Applications back in 2003. So while this one would be very useful in like maybe the literature review, this might not be something that would come up. So let's give this one a chance. This one is not one of our, problem statement and future research type things, but let's go look at this one real quick. Boom. Catching the insider threat. Does that find us that one? Yes, right? It did. Let's open that in a new tab. And what we can do real quick, pull this up. We can grab this with our Zotero. I like to grab it with Zotero. Boom. Honeypot catching the insider threat. And then go look real quick. This is very, very old. But it's got some really good reference. Oh yeah. The strategy. Yeah. So we're gonna at least grab this out. All right, we're gonna pull this out from the world. This is gonna become part of our. Oh wait, hold on. I need to leave this one open. No. Hold on. I wanna. Mistakes have been made, guys. Where was I at? I think I was up. I was in the honeypots. No, go back one. Enhancing honeypot fidelity. I thought I had captured that one. I'm lost. Okay, that's fine. I am lost, but I have it right here. So Spitzer, it's this one right here. But I just don't know where this one went. What's this one called? Honeypots catching. Okay. So now we're going to just go grab the bibliography here. Boom. Here. And we'll say old. Very old. But good enumeration on what the strategy of honeypotting is. That's very important. Groovepunk, I wouldn't do that necessarily, but what I might build every day is make sure that my system would pull down. I have a few that I used to do that were nightly builds, or morning builds, if you want to think of them like that. But I actually have a thing where I discuss them on a type of troubleshooting methodology. But suffice it to say, what I would do is I would build, and actually you guys might find this silly, but I would build the exact same system every day from the golden image. I would pull down all the stuff from the same exact repositories every day. I would use the same exact service accounts to go pull the same exact information from all the places every single morning. And then you say, well, why would you ever do that against like 8 different types of systems? Well, because I wanted to make sure every day that the person who went and pressed the little gumball machine and got the little new server out, kind of just rolled down to them like a little gumball, always worked. So I would build machines every morning that these weren't necessarily kernel rebuilds. They were just rebuilds of the, actually, you might even think of them as like a redeployment from a golden image. You might think of them as inflating a server. You might think of them as preparing and personalizing a server for an environment. And I would build those every morning just to make sure that they worked in my dev and my prod environments, so that when people came up and said, hey, can you build this new server again right now? And I'd say, yeah, sure, I can. Or if they would say, hey, this server has failed in some way. We've got all the logs. Can you just redeploy it? Because I treated my servers like they were ephemeral, and I could just move them right out of the way and put the new one on. And that was something that I kind of used to do. YouTuber, you said you use Bitbuy. I've never even heard of that. What is that? Is that a good? Look, I'm always for new stuff. You just got to remember, I'm an old dog with old tricks. What is this? You guys will find that I'll use anything that works. I just am very set in my ways often. You can do graphical stuff. What does this look like? What's my version? What's my license? Lawful, personal, and commercial purpose. Okay, okay. Okay. So you can use it for personal or commercial purposes. You just can't implement it in other things, which is, I think that's perfectly fair, guys. I think that's actually a really good thing like that. That was automated. Yeah, that would pop off at like 4 a.m. every morning. I didn't do that manually. No, I would just check the reports that it was good. Yeah. But I just needed to make sure that it was going to work when my users pushed the button. Oh yeah, no, I didn't do that myself. That was my Ansible. Okay, wait. So this one is old, but it's an interesting one. Good enumeration. Let's see if there's any. Oh, look at that. That's an old Google page. I want to see if they have future research. They do call for future research, but again, this is so old that this really wouldn't be useful in that context. This is more like a definition type doc, so that's good. Okay. The one that I knew I really wanted to look at was one of these down here. One of these had a really good, so that was the 2003. Where was the one I really knew that I wanted to look at here? 2023. Oh, they got application driver stuff. NLTK. What is that? I don't even know what that is. What is NLTK.org? What is that? Natural Language Toolkit. Okay. Yeah. I knew I had heard that before. And this just breaks it up into tokens. Yeah. I've actually used this for a different project years ago, but not anything recently for sure. Let's see if they got anything else interesting in here. They did some Twilio stuff. Here, I can make that a little bigger for you guys. Twilio, not necessarily interesting. 2017, 2019, a little outside of my time frames. 2006, recognizing virtual honeypots and countermeasures. That might be interesting work. 2005. So a lot of this stuff is quite old. 2013. A little too old to be useful for us in this context. So that's fine. Okay. Where were we at? So then where were we finding these? I know I probably threw away the one that I was using. Go back here. We've lost our thread. Now we got to go down another thread. Where'd my Zotero go? Here we go. These were some of the newer ones. Can I get these by date of when I put them in here? That would be interesting to me. Nah. This does show when I first accessed some of this stuff. I remember looking at this one. So this one will be interesting. We'll pull this one up. I remember looking at this, and this is non peer reviewed, right? So this one, if I were to pull this one up, non peer reviewed. Whoops. Generate. I have to write this one up myself if I can't get the thing on it. I think this one originally had a good amount of just information in it. So this one was very informational, and I thought this one had good references. So this was CISA Red Teams talking about key findings for hardening systems, right? So I thought this one was kind of useful. Let's go look. It had a lot of reference docs, which I like. I like when they reference other things so that we can go spin off into those different areas. It looks like they're doing a high level, like, here's our overview. Here's our, what did I just see? Each individual thing that they're looking at. So post-exploitation, gaining access to SPSs, different servers, potential access, how they might start to do that. See what permissions they have. A lot of this stuff, it's funny, if you study the STIGs, you see how the STIGs block a lot of the stuff that they're talking about here. They want to try to see if they can create or delete things out of the database. Well, we stop that, and then we also audit it, right, from any default user, right? So like there's all these things that, like, it's funny when you read about them, you're like, oh, there's interesting things going on here, but there's also ways to slow them down or protect against them and that kind of stuff. So I think this had a good enumeration of things, that people might be trying to do. And then they had some findings, but this is non-empirical. This is non-peer reviewed, so it's not really something that I could use, except for I could maybe use that a little bit for like just like a discussion, right? I can do some you can add some context with that and that kind of stuff, but it's not necessarily something you would use. I have not used NAM yet, so let's go look at NAM. Yep, nope. He hasn't been referenced yet, so we'll go pull him up. And what is this one doing? Ah. So this one had some eBPDF stuff. Sorry, eBPF. Right. Which is a model for looking at calls down to the system kernel, right? And user space and system calls. And I thought this one was interesting for a couple reasons. One, it's still within my valid range. So let's go grab this real quick. But it also talks about some of the things that we would be doing. So let me go pull this up, drop this down here. Oh, wait. That's, shoot, grab this. It's the wrong time. There we go. 2023. Let's go pull this one up real quick and read about it. So I could probably pull it up in here, but I might also be able to pull it up by its DOI number if I wanted to. You should typically be able to copy that link, drop the link over here and access it directly, right? If it's available out there. So this is the same type of way that you would get it inside of the scholar.google, right? Which is useful, right? So here's this same thing. It's not in dark mode, I know. But talk about virtualized and containerized application deployment at industrial scales for public and private cloud stuff. Google has spawned more than 2 billion containers per week. That's interesting. Okay. And then it's like, well, let's go look down to what they're doing here. So they have some different information, good definitions. Right, good information and definitions for my literature review. A lot of stuff in here that's useful, and then I can kind of use to talk to some of this stuff. Drawings, references, maybe not so useful. This table might be interesting. Talks about what these things might protect. Docker, Flannel, Weave, Calico, and they mention Bastion. So I might say Bastion's mentioned, and potential use of figure, and then their figure is this figure right here that I would grab. And obviously, when you can use figures from people, you can always use a table or a figure, but then you reference it properly. You say where you found it, you give them credit for it, right? You don't just grab stuff and take it, right? But you do give, reference of where you found it. And I like this because if I'm talking about bastions, as opposed to maybe even some of these other things that I might reference and talk about in the literature review, a bastion does block all of these things, right? It does protect these things. So this is an important specification if I'm talking about bastion hosts, right? Bastion nodes, if that's the thing that we're talking about. So that's also, yeah. All right. Lots of this one's definitely like concept heavy, which I like. Even if this one doesn't have like we're gonna look, is this empirical? This is the next thing. Is this empirical? Does it gather some data or no? So, and again, remember I told you guys that as a really gross oversimplification of all research, super gross simplification. Some of you guys are gonna be like, oh my God, Scott, that's too simple. It's true, but I kind of think of it like this: research is either going one direction and just being like a survey and talking about a lot of stuff and enumerating and putting it together, maybe even applying models and talking about how models work, and or it's empirical, and that research is the type that I need for this. Now they do have a test environment. They used 3 machines. They cleared. Did they gather data? And it looks like they did. They did gather empirical data. They did gather packets. So this is an empirical. I'm going to know how to spell empirical by the end of this. This is empirical. And then we come down here and let's look at their conclusions, and in this case, related work, and then conclusions. Sometimes you'll also get what's called future work, but let's at least look in their, do they have an actual... Typically, like, here's their evaluation of what happened, right? And then related work, container security analysis. They do have good references in here to other things. Container network security. Let's go to their conclusion. So here's the conclusion: containerization, widely popular virtualization technology, aggressively deployed. Good, that's true. Analyze security challenges involved in current container networks and address these perceived by presenting Bastion, an intelligent communication bridge for securing container network communications using Linux kernel features. Yep, that's true. That's how my Bastions work as well. Now they're talking about a very specific, when they say Bastion, they're using this little thing. So they mean a very specific thing: restricted network and traffic visibilities of containers with per container fine-grained network control and container-to-container network isolation. Also, Bastion enables selective security functions, chaining according to containerized applications for further application level inspections, and help administrators correctly configure their security policies using its security policy system. Okay, so they're using a specific tool. They did look into what that tool did. What I don't see here is like a future work. So they're not calling for any future work or anything new that they're doing. This is not necessarily great for me in that sense, but it does have some interesting things there. Let's go look down at what their references were. What were they looking at? And then let's see if there's anything good in their references that I might be able to use. They looked at everything in Google runs in containers. That's funny. That's probably a pretty good little thing, maybe even for me to use for let me see here. That's weird. It's not great. Yep, so it wasn't great. Netflix technical. So there's a technical blog by Netflix that they referenced, 2022. Now that may have some good information in it, but it won't be peer-reviewed or empirical. But it may have some good. Often things like this are useful for. Oh, goddamn! I gotta stop doing that. They're good just for terminology, that kind of stuff. And they're good for referencing. That's funny. Yeah, probably won't use that one. Core OS, Docker, Red Hat. All right. App Armor. So this is a lot of their references of their initial definitions early on, because this is in order. Enhanced App Armor Docker Security Profile Generator from 2021. That's just outside of my window of what I would want to use. SE Linux Policy Generation for Containers. That one is within my time frame, so I could maybe look into using that. That reference is outside of my window. That is too. All of these are also outside of my window. I really want 2022 and above. They do have some good, at least the technologies that are used that are there. But I'm mostly looking for, if I can, research, right? Empirical research. Black Hat, vulnerability exploitation in Docker container environments. That might have some interesting stuff. 0 day, BusyBox, StackRox, Sync. My 17. Most of these are outside of my window. Weaveworks. Okay. They do have some interesting things. Not too many things really in my time frame that I'm going to need, so I'll leave that there as it is. Let's go look at this one. We didn't dig into any of these, so we were in the cybersecurity resilience engineering earlier, and then we didn't go down this page really. We started up at this top one with Ross, but we didn't go into any of these other ones either. This is 2024. This is a current, pretty current. Let's see what this research looks like. All right. And is this one also peer reviewed? They use a model called the V, apparently. Cybersecurity through the systems engineering V. Confidentiality. Yep, those are all important. Let's see what this V looks like. Concept initiation, systems architecture, requirements, design, development. Okay, down that way. We build the system, integrate component testing, right? Component microservice testing, subsystem service verification, and system validation, operational acceptance. So this is good. It uses some of these other models. Non-functional versus functional. Does everybody know what a non-functional versus a functional requirement? Functional requirement is like something that you can check, and it's like this system uses port 80. Boom, it's a web server. This server exists behind a load balancer with 3 stood up nodes that can be hit at one virtual IP address, but then backends to each of the nodes. Boom. But the non-functional requirement is like, or a lot of times non-functional testing is like, do the servers handle the load of the 5001st? That's not a functional thing. A functional thing is like the things that it does and you can check off. This is like fit for use, and this is fit for warranty. This says, does it start on the 5000th crank of the engine? Does the 5000th port 80 web connection that connects to the front end load balancer go to one of the nodes and they return a static web page like they're supposed to? That's what a non-functional requirement is, right? So if you guys are ever wondering, and they have some security controls around that. This one is probably good. Let's see what they're doing here. This is definitely a high level. It's by IEEE, so it's definitely going to have been December 5th, 2025, ETC from IEEE Explore. What did they do with this? Let's go see. What did they do with here? MBSC. Let's look at their MBSC. All right, so they're using MBSE, model-based systems engineering, right? So these guys. Let's see if we can grab their document down here. So we'll go through this in the Zotero. Dissertation should be right here. Get out of there. Polish, right? We'll grab their bibliography. Oops. I'm always jumping the gun on that. Right? So IEEE Aerospace, so that's good. And it's non-empirical, so it's non-empirical, but good for definitions around functional and non-functional requirements. Right? That's where I'm going to use this if I do use anything out of here. It won't be to, you know, further what I'm going to do for my research. It's just a definition. Also, that model is not a bad. This is not a bad model. The categorize, select, implement, assess, and authorize. That's not a bad model. I like that model. I haven't seen this one before, but a systems engineering V correlated. So I might even take this, right? Systems engineering V. I hadn't heard this term before, and this is I've been in security, or I've been in systems engineering my whole career, but I haven't heard this before. And then it's like, well, where does that come from? This is the original. We've captured that already. This is the original implementation, or where did this come from, right? Right. We can maybe go find where this first happened. Somebody had the V model here. Been around a long time, but I've never seen it before. Right? Ah, here it is. Yeah, so there you go. And then what I might do is go look for what they call the oh god, somebody help me out here. What's that called when it's the first it's like Everything by Deming is one of these. It's the like the foundational work, but there's another name for it. It's another word for like the first, or like the foundation of everything. What is that called? I got the word empirical stuck in my head. Now I can't think of what this other damn word is. Anyways, they may even reference where they got it from. V models. Oh yeah, I kind of like this one. This has some good stuff in it. This is some of the old stuff. What is it? What is that called? Somebody knows what that is. It means like the rock. It's like the work like that everything else is based off of. We think of it with like Deming and like his Deming principles and I cannot remember that word. It doesn't matter. Summary and conclusion, references. Now, they had some pretty good early references. Let's see if they go all the way back to where this reference model comes from. Somebody knows what that is. Chart 1979, and the Germany's Das V model. who are the original? J.B. Munson, the original V-chart. Oh, somebody knows what I mean by that. What's that original? What's that mean? That original term? It's not the archetype. It's definitely not empirical, but empirical is the word that keeps coming up in my head when I think about it. It's like the ultimate, but there's a term for it when it's the first one. Yeah. V model, general testing. Seminal work, that's what it is. Why can't I think about that? It's a seminal work. The first work on a thing, right? Typically you can use seminal works if they're, even though they're outside of your 5-year window for your dissertation stuff. I do like this V model. I may V model. Might use that as part of this. Also, I mean, we might go back in over here and look for some V model stuff. Because typically when you're building things, you have to build them for a model, like to a model. The instrumentation that you use as a researcher has to be, you're not building your own instrumentation during a dissertation. You're using established instrumentation, as it were. So from these models, I'll go find ways that people have tested and built around those models, and then I can use that for myself. It's one of these things where, again, it's like you can't just go off and do your own research. You have to build to other things that have happened in the industry. You have to do future type work recommendations off other things, right? You can't just be running around doing whatever you want. So let's go look at maybe, what is this? Some Wiley PDF. What does this look like? Cyber-oriented digital engineering contributions to this paper. And where did this come from? This comes from 2021, revised, accepted it within the window. So this is within the window that we would use. Code integration, bring to the next level of, got some cyber best practices. And then come down to, how is Code Engineer V code? Advanced persistent threat. Oh, threat. Morpheus Chaos Monkey, we know all about that guy. So what did they do? Did they actually do any... I don't see any actual... So this is non-empirical. Object Management Group, OMG. That's funny. And Unified Modeling Framework. Okay. So, this is peer-reviewed. It is not necessarily, though, empirical, because there's no data that are being looked at. There's not even qualitative data. Qualitative data would be fine, but they are doing some reference architecture stuff. They're looking at how some things are interfacing, and this is interesting, but not necessarily probably something that I'll use for this. Let's keep going down. Systems Engineering V. Also, one thing I can do is I can say since 2021 or 2022 if I want to now, and this will limit them down to just within my things that I want. go look what this is. Tolerant cybersecurity attacks. Okay. DARPA, cybersecurity engineering program and tools. Good definitions and stuff going on in here. So we might want to grab this real quick. Let's go look at our Zotero. Let's grab this. Let's create a bibliography. Boom. And then there's no date on this. I would have thought there was a date. Let me see if I can find the date here. 2023. I'm going to change that to not no date, but 2023, because I'm going to want that later. Let's go look. And they gathered some information, automated UAV. That's actually funny. Those automated UAVs have been around for quite some time. They're talking about specifications and how they work. Don't necessarily care about that. Let's see if they gather any information. We've got some filters and some monitors. They did a case study. Let's see if they gathered data. They flew some waypoints around, it looks like. Did they actually collect and assimilate information? I don't see any data here. I see that they were looking at some... They do not do any analysis of it, so it doesn't really matter if they collected it. However, system engineer to integrate cybersecurity vulnerability analysis mitigations into this. Current process of applying briefcases to some of these things. Okay, so they don't necessarily have anything here that's useful to me from that perspective, so I'll probably drop this. But what I'm still going to do with them, like we've been doing in these other ones, is we're going to go look at what their references are. See if there's anything in here that looks interesting. So they've got some architecture analysis and design language, AADL, from back in 2009. So some of this stuff is a bit dated for me to use. Maybe some of this stuff isn't as useful. 2021, outside of my range, right? Outside of my normal, what I might want to look at or use. Let's look if there's anything from 2022 or on. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2008, 2003, 2005. Yeah, I don't really see anything in here. That would be super useful for us. They're all just kind of outside of our time frame, so we might throw this one out and say that one's not as interesting to us. Internalization methodology for automobile functional safety and cybersecurity process. This one might be kind of interesting. I did a lot with satellites in my time, so this one might be kind of interesting. Let's go look at the satellite one. I used to work at Lockheed Martin, and we would do all the downstream data from satellites, so that was kind of good. This one is for a dissertation, so this one itself wouldn't necessarily be useful for me, right? But this one would be good for references. But they are using model-based systems engineering approaches and cybersecurity architecture for satellites. So that is this may be a very useful PDF for me. Let's download the PDF just so we have it. And actually, I should be able to open this and then still use Zotero to grab it. Maybe Zotero won't work on this one. But somebody was doing for their doctorate of engineering, so this is similar to my doctorate in that respect. And then down here, again, I can't use a lot of their stuff. I can't use a lot of his stuff because dissertations aren't peer-reviewed. But introduction, background, research questions and tasks, there may be some good techniques that he's used that are interesting to me. But mainly what's interesting to me with something like this would typically be, you know, what kind of things they've added. So he's got a table here on maybe the different types of threat agents that might be kind of useful or interesting, right? Let's save this somewhere. I probably want to save this to I guess I can go grab it out of the folder. Downloads. Just gonna go move this over into. Let's go. References or documents, I don't know, something like that. That stuff's all good. They've got some good things that can happen, threat categories and stuff. That's all probably somewhat useful for me as well. Satellite components, less interesting to me in this context, but for sure some of those other things. He's got research questions. Find the cybersecurity threats, and okay, that's interesting. So because he's doing research question 2, architecture for a candidate low Earth orbit satellite. Okay, then they break some of these things down. Okay, I want to get to their reference section. I think some of this is interesting, but I also think it's interesting again that they're allowed to do. I guess their college is going to allow them to do, or allows them to do, scientific notation. Which I would greatly prefer scientific notation, but we don't all get to do that. He's got things that are outside of his typical window, but you can do that if they're seminal works or kind of foundational type works. Most of his stuff is probably going to be within our time frame though. So probably go reference some of this other stuff. Let's go see if any of these things are within my. This is one that somebody else had used as well. Somebody else actually from that college used the same Systems Engineering Vision 2035. And I only recognize that because I remember thinking, oh, that's a very specific future date. I don't want that, but. All right. Anyways, I'll go dig into this one later, maybe. We'll just get it now. There's some threats against space. Satellite stuff, not necessarily directly related to what I'm doing, so not something I'm going to necessarily care about. Any of their cybersecurity stuff, though. There's a lot of non-date. So ND is always no date, or it's just when it's referenced or if it's available, but it's not. There's no date involved. That's wow. There's a lot of those. Surprised that got by. Oh, I mean, I guess whatever their standard is. I wouldn't expect to get that many by. Oh shit, there's a lot of NDs. A whole freaking lot. Wow. Can I just do anything that is? Okay. This one might be interesting right here. Let's see if we can find back over here in our Scholar Google. Boom. So, fuzzing framework aimed at identifying vulnerabilities within these systems. Okay, so that's interesting. You know, just throwing. Anytime we're talking about fuzzing, it's generating data, right? And not always noise, but generating data is fuzzing, right, around something. So in this case, they're probably throwing weird input data, non-validated input data at a system, that kind of stuff. Let's go at least see what this one looks like. I don't see anything else in here that's super interesting to me. That's older. It's older. Yeah, hijacking satellites is definitely not going to be good for the DoD to allow happening. So that's good. Okay, get this out of the way. Fuzzing. Modern vehicles increasingly become interconnected digital ecosystems, rely on sophisticated networks for operations and safety. True. Study induced a novel fuzzing framework aimed at identifying vulnerabilities within their systems, within their controller area network. Okay. They propose a framework, and then they do almost nothing else. This is just a proposed framework. This is, man, that may be the shortest doc I've ever seen somebody publish. That's literally the whole thing right there. Yeah, I wouldn't use that for nothing. Okay. We looked at those. We probably systems engineering, cybersecurity threats. There might be some good stuff in here. And we do want since 2022, right? We need them in this time frame, and then we can kind of dig in on that. All right, guys, I also hear that the wife is back. So since I hear the wife's around here, I'll probably call this here. I'm going to get this, I'm going to be a lot more organized and get my dissertation stuff, together and in order so that I can get this next part going. But expect to see me doing maybe not so much of this. It won't always be like this. This is me getting ready for my IRB, and I'm like very focused on getting some of these fundamental things that I need. But in the future, we'll probably be playing more in the system. We actually have one of the systems running and up that is going to be collecting a lot of our data. But then when we go and plan it all out, we'll lay out, what our research looks like and what our, bastion nodes and honey nets and stuff are going to look like, and then figure out what if we're going to design our own system and play to that, or if we're going to use models that are already there, and then we're going to actually probably capture and enumerate a lot of these problems that exist and just figure out how we're going to do that within our bastions, because we have bastions. We're good at building them. We know that I use them all over in the government systems. I know that they do the things they do, but I don't know how well they do those things and what the other techniques are, and maybe we need to come up with a method, right? If I can't find anybody, I've looked, guys. I have been looking at this one for years. There's nobody that's like enumerating all the threats, right? Like from like an academic standpoint. So we might do that. So that might be what the dissertation's officially on. But I got to get this next part done, and then we'll move forward from there. Hop in the Discord if you guys want to hang out and talk with. Man, there's almost 40. What are we up to? We're like 4,400 almost. We're getting there. So Akshunya here. Yeah, Akshunya, I'm getting off of here, right? I've been on for a little bit. But I do promise that I'll be recording those automation things soon and getting some of this other stuff going. So I definitely appreciate everybody coming by, hanging out with me. I do appreciate, people that find this stuff interesting, even if it's not directly what you want to do. Hopefully some of this stuff is at least useful for you guys, and my ramblings kind of show that we're putting stuff together and trying to find a good change of topic, since I changed from my other topic. So all right, guys, we'll talk. I will be around. I'll see some of you guys later on this week.